Something has been piling up in my freezer for months, and today I am dealing with it. So I am opening package after package of raw beef fat, and I am rendering that into tallow. So this is something that I love to do on a regular basis because I love tallow. There's so many different things that you can make with it. We like to use it for cooking, frying. We like to make our French fries in it, deep fat frying. We like to make soap with it, shampoo bars, and other things like tallow balm, of course. On my website, bumblebeeapothecary.com, I actually have a lot of different tallow recipes that I've created, and if you want to check any of those out, I'll have a link to that down in the description. But to render this, I'm using the wet method because this is the most gentle method to render beef fat into tallow. So I just have my raw beef fat in my crock pot. Don't mind how dirty this crock pot looks. I usually use this one outside for this step, but I brought it in just so you could see a little bit more easily what I'm doing. So I stick that in there, I add some water, I add some salt, and then I put it on low. And this does get kind of smelly while it's rendering, so I'm going to let it go outside. But that's the first thing that I do not buy from the store is animal fats. I love to render those myself. This is tallow, lard, anything like that. The next thing that I love making at home, just because I think it's so much better, is baked goods. So I've been really enjoying making sourdough bread and buns and cinnamon rolls and different things like that. I just really find it so enjoyable, but full disclosure, I have not always made these. There's been very busy seasons of life where I have definitely found a nice high quality organic long fermented sourdough bread to buy, but when I can, I do love to make them because I think homemade is just the best. The other thing that I love to make homemade is mayonnaise, and the main reason for this is because it is, number one, so easy, but really my biggest reason is that it's really hard to find a commercial mayonnaise that is made with oils that I'm really happy with. So when I make it at home, I usually will use an organic extra virgin olive oil. But in the store, I haven't, if you have one, let me know. Leave me a comment and let me know. But I haven't been able to find a commercial all natural mayonnaise that's made with just olive oil. They've always had a blend of other seed oils and different things. And you can get avocado oil, but I have heard that avocado oil is probably not the best choice. Another way that I like to make it is using bacon grease. I don't often have enough bacon grease on hand, but that is really delicious. But usually it's olive oil. So like I said, super easy. I have a recipe on my website that is my favorite way to make it, where you use an immersion blender. It pretty much always works this way. And yeah, you can control the ingredients and make it exactly how you like it. The next thing that I don't like to buy from the store that I much prefer to make is salad dressings. I did do a more detailed video on these, plus I have a blog post on my recipes, but so easy to make your own salad dressings. And then fermented foods. So one of our favorite is probiotic pickles. These are really nice to make. I always like to make a whole bunch of jars of these when pickles are in season, or cucumbers are in season rather. We turn them into pickles. And then we'll enjoy these throughout the rest of the year. So I make as many as I can. I love homemade fermented foods. Sauerkraut is another great one. When you make them at home, they're supposed to be full of even more probiotics and beneficial microbes than any of the probiotic or fermented foods that you can buy in the store. It's just supposed to be a lot more therapeutic. That's what I've heard. I just know that I love making them because I just think they're a lot more tasty. And you can control exactly how they taste. Beet kvass is another really nice one. So this is a kind of a liver tonic is kind of what we use it for. So I have a recipe on my blog also how I like to make this, but it's fermented, it's probiotic. Beets are really powerful cleansers according to Dr. Natasha, who created the GAPS diet. And so this is really nice just to take, especially during like springtime when the body is really into like cleansing and detox, or just any time that you just want to really give your liver some extra love. I just enjoy keeping this on hand in the refrigerator. Elderberry syrup is another one that I love to make because it can be, you can buy it, but it's so expensive and you save so much money making nice big batches of it and keeping it on hand. Lately I've been experimenting with adding apple cider vinegar in place of part of the honey, and I really like it that way. I think it adds a little bit more benefits, and then it doesn't taste so overly sweet when you're taking it too. Another thing that I love to make at home is fermented or cultured dairy products. So my absolute hands down favorite is kefir. So this is milk kefir. I like it because it's easier than homemade yogurt and it has a lot more beneficial microbes in it. It has beneficial bacteria and it also has lots of beneficial yeasts. So this can be helpful for so many different things, but I really love keeping it in rotation for different things. I like making smoothies with it. So for this one, I just have some frozen pineapple in my blender jar, and then I'm adding kefir, and then I'm just going to blend that up together, and it's so good. One of the things that I love to do is to have something like this that's just a really quick, easy go-to kind of snack or treat, if you will, that you can just go to, make for my kids, make for myself. It's full of so many benefits when it's like this. So something that I like to remember about homemade cultured dairy is that the cultured dairy that you get in the store, like yogurt or kefir, it's usually lightly pasteurized after it's cultured, and so you're going to lose some of those beneficial microbes. I don't really know how many survive that and what you're actually getting in store-bought cultured dairy. So that's why I love making it at home, where I know that everything is alive and beneficial. I personally like to use raw milk for my cultured dairy because then you get all of those beneficial microbes that's in the raw milk, all of the intact enzymes, all that kind of stuff. I just know that my body loves raw milk so much better than anything pasteurized. It just feels so much better with it, and I know it works better for me. But that's what I'm using to make my raw milk kefir. And it's so easy. Like, you just keep your jar at room temperature when it cultures. You don't need extra equipment like a yogurt maker or anything. It just cultures at room temperature. So I have my jar that I keep in the cabinet with my kefir grains in it, and then I just check on it every now and then. I'll usually strain it every few days. So I will do it more often, like maybe every day or two in warm weather when the house is warmer, and then during cold weather it cultures more slowly, so then I'll let it go for maybe like 3 or 4 days in between, and then strain out the grains and start a new batch whenever it gets thick. So I just watch for it. I try to not let it get over cultured because then it gets kind of a strong flavor, and that's not the best. Most enjoyable. I think it's probably more therapeutic that way, but it can be kind of tart and strong. So I try to not let it go that long. I try to just strain it once it's nice and thick and go from there. But it's so easy to include. My kids really like it, and I love knowing that they're getting all those great beneficial probiotics and beneficial yeast strains and different things like that. If you're new to making milk kefir and you want to get started and you're kind of wondering, like, where do I get the grains? What even are they? So they're scobies, basically. If you're familiar with a kombucha SCOBY, SCOBY just stands for symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast. That's what kefir grains are. They're just a different one than a kombucha SCOBY. So you can get these, you can order them online, you can get dehydrated kefir grains from somewhere like Cultures for Health. You can also get already activated kefir grains. Amazon has them. There's a seller on Amazon that has them. And then you can also get them from somebody, if you know somebody who makes kefir. The grains actually reproduce and grow over time, and so you have to actually get rid of them over time. So if somebody is making kefir and has extra ones to give away, that can be a perfect way to get started with it, because they can just give you some of their extras. But if you're not sure kind of where to look, then buying them online is great. And if you want to find somebody in your area who might have them, the Weston A. Price Foundation is a really great resource. It can let you know on their website where your local chapter is. You can contact the chapter leader and ask for things like kefir grains, and they can hook you up with somebody who has some extra kefir grains to give away. And then when I have extra ones, sometimes my kids will actually like to eat them. They actually really enjoy that. So sometimes I'll give them to them, or sometimes I'll give them to my chickens, and then they just enjoy a little probiotic treat. So that's what I do with them. But this is so delicious. This pineapple, frozen pineapple with kefir blended together is so refreshing. I love the flavor combination and super easy, full of great benefits. So yeah, if you're new to kefir, or if you're thinking about getting started, go for it. I am on to the next step of my tallow rendering process. So this is what I do. So I let it render in there with the water and salt for a while until everything is nice and soft. So it's ideal to have your tallow ground into little pieces, but I don't often end up getting it from a place that will grind it for me. So what I have discovered is this little workaround. So like I said, I let it get nice and soft in there, and then I take my immersion blender and I'll whiz it all up until it's just a soupy mixture, and then I let it finish rendering. What this does is it breaks all of the fat up into little pieces, and small pieces render much more quickly and it yields a lot more tallow. So I let that soupy mixture continue to finish rendering, and then once it has finished rendering, you're going to see how it kind of separated out here. So there's oil on the top, water kind of settles to the bottom, and then that soupy mixture of all the different pieces of connective tissue and everything that's not tallow settles to the bottom as well. So what I'm doing here is just straining the mixture so that all those little pieces of solids stay out, and then my tallow just goes into the bowl at the bottom. So once I've done this, I'm actually going to go on to my next step, which is a purifying step. I'm going to first let this tallow harden in the bowl. I'll pop it out, scrape off any kind of impurities that settle on the bottom, and then I'll render it again with salt and water, and that'll just purify it further. I like to do this because that way I have the option of using tallow for skincare and soap and making tallow balm and different things like that, where you don't want a strong beefy flavor. And I find that this is the way to get that nice light colored tallow that does not have that strong beefy smell. And then sometimes I have done more than one purifying step if I just really want to make sure, but usually I find that one is sufficient. I'll end up using part of this for cooking, part of it for soap making, part of it for tallow balm, different things like that. But yeah, so we're kind of using tallow as a theme for this video, things I don't buy at the store. And one of the biggest reasons for that is because those rendered animal fats, if you go to like a natural grocery store and you look for grass-fed tallow or lard or something in a jar, it is so expensive. And so by rendering it yourself at home from raw beef fat, you save so much money. You get a lot more, and it costs just a small fraction of what it would cost to buy those jars of rendered fat in the store. So that's one of the big reasons I like to do it. It's just a lot more money saving, and I think it ends up being better quality too. The ones in the store tend to have a pretty strong meat flavor, which is fine for cooking, but I don't love that for skincare and tallow balm and soap and things like that. So I like being able to render it this way, where I know it's more gentle, doesn't get that strong smell, doesn't burn, and then I get, you know, plenty of it to make different things that I want with it. I have to say that I really love the fact that tallow and other animal fats are making such a big comeback. When I started my other YouTube channel, Bumblebee Apothecary, that was, let's see, how many years ago was that now? That was 7 years ago when I started that. It didn't seem like there was a whole lot of people talking about tallow and making different things with tallow. There were some, but now, 7 years later, there are a lot more people. There's a lot more companies that have sprung up, and they're making beautiful things like tallow lotion, and so many different people making great tallow balm. They're making cosmetics like lipstick and lip balm, all kinds of great things, deodorant. There's a number of places that you can buy tallow-based products from now that I didn't really see that before. So I love that it's becoming more popular. Lots more people are being interested in cooking with it and bringing it back as a great option for cooking and frying and baking, even different things like that. So I have to say I really love that. For a while, there was a lot of people kind of scared of animal fats because of certain information that was out there, and I'm not really going to go into all those details, but there are some really great resources, some good books. Nourishing Traditions is an awesome cookbook with so much great information in it that talks about how animal fats are actually very, very beneficial. It's the seed oils that are the problem. So yeah, I have to say I'm so excited about that. So I'd love to know, what are your thoughts on that? Do you already use a lot of animal fats? Have you always done it that way, or did you have to make a shift at one point and stop using seed oils and things like that and move over to animal fats? And what did you notice when you made that change? Let me know in the comments kind of where you're at with all of that and what your experience has been, because I'd love to hear. I just always think it's really neat too how these traditional ways of doing things that people did for thousands and thousands of years suddenly make a comeback, and then people realize, hey, this is actually the better way. And I think it's so interesting how there was so much wisdom in the old ways of doing things, and that certain generations were really quick to just skip over to something new that wasn't really tried and tested and proven. And I like to remember that for myself, to be careful about jumping to anything new without really thinking about what the implications are going to be and all of that. There's a lot going on, I feel like, in our day with technology and artificial intelligence and different things like that. And I know that I just want to be very careful, because technology, it can be useful for different things, but we always have to keep it as a servant and never anything more than that, and to be used with wisdom. So I like to remember that when it comes to different information about what's healthy, what foods are good and what aren't, kind of like what's stood the test of time, what's been proven, what did people 250 years ago do and think. You know, not that people didn't make mistakes back then, but there's a lot of wisdom in something that's been around for a long time oftentimes. And I just think it's smart to kind of think and not jump too quickly to change something without really understanding. Another big thing is who's behind it, like who's pushing the new thing and what's their motive. That's something that I always want to think about too. So this process that you see here is where I'm scraping the tallow cake again. So this is after it's rendered. It's purified a second time, strained again through cheesecloth, and then hardened again. So then I'm just scraping the much smaller amount of sediment that settled on the bottom of the cake. And then it's at this point ready to use. So I wash anything off, make sure all that's scraped off, and then kind of rinse it off. And then I just let it dry out in the air for a while. I want to make sure that all the water is out of it so that nothing molds or anything. But tallow can be kept at room temperature for quite a long time, as long as there's no water in it and it's been rendered properly and is nice and pure, and there's nothing in it to really mold when it's been done properly. And so it's quite shelf stable for months if it's done right. If for long-term storage though, I will usually just play it safe and keep it in the refrigerator or freezer for long-term storage, and then if I plan to use it within a few weeks or so, then I'm fine with leaving it on the counter. And while I'm finishing up my tallow cake here, my last category of things that I do not buy from the store and I much prefer to make at home would be desserts. So cakes, cookies, any kind of baked good treat like that. I grew up with a mom who loved to make these things from scratch at home, and so I know that homemade just tastes so much better, and anytime you get something from the store like that, it's just disappointing once you're used to how good homemade makes. So that's my list of things that I love to make rather than buy at the store. I'd love to hear what your list is, so leave me a comment down below. And thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!